Prescott Elementary was buzzing with excitement. Career Week had arrived. Inside Mrs. Worthington's third-grade classroom in Chandler, Arizona, the desks had been rearranged into neat rows, and the reading rug was freshly vacuumed, ready for the proud parade of parents and their professions. One by one, kids would beam with pride as they shared stories of moms who baked wedding cakes and dads who repaired fire engines. But for 8-year-old Malik Carter, this was more than just a break from spelling tests. This was his moment. Small for his age but sharp as a tack, Malik sat on the rug with a proud little smile and both hands wrapped around a notebook he decorated with stars, rockets, and block letters spelling out NASA. So when Mr. Reynolds, the new teacher with the khaki slacks and clipboard glued to his hand, asked each student to share what their parents did, Malik couldn't wait. "My dad," he said, sitting up straight, "works at NASA." There was a beat of silence, then a snicker, then a full-on whisper laugh from the back row. "Yeah, right." But it wasn't the kids that crushed him. It was the adult in the room. Mr. Reynolds let out a small chuckle, the kind grown-ups do when they think a kid is just being cute. "NASA, huh?" he said, eyebrows raised. "That's quite the imagination, Malik. Maybe next time we aim for something a little more realistic." The words hit Malik like a slap. Not loud, not cruel on the surface, but deep. It wasn't just disbelief, it was dismissal. It wasn't just that Mr. Reynolds believed him. It was that he didn't believe a black kid like Malik could have a dad doing anything remotely close to rocket science. Malik's smile disappeared. His fingers gripped his notebook tighter, and his shoulders sank lower. He didn't speak again for the rest of the morning. From the back row, Zoe, who had sat next to Malik all year, leaned in and whispered, "I believe you." But Malik didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the floor, and the dream he had been ready to share with pride was now crumpled into a silent weight in his chest. And Mr. Reynolds, he just kept going, called on the next kid, didn't notice. Or maybe he did but chose to look away. 3 days before Career Week, Malik Carter sat in the garage on an old milk crate, sipping a Capri Sundae, while his dad untangled wires from a storage bin. The garage smelled faintly of engine oil and cardboard, but to Malik it was sacred ground because this was where science came to life. "So wait," Malik asked, eyes wide behind his glasses. "How long does it take for a message to get from Mars back to Earth?" Dr. Elijah Carter, tall, broad-shouldered, with a calm voice and hands that never stopped moving, glanced up from the cables. "Depends where Mars is in its orbit. Sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 20. Malik grinned. "So it's like texting one with really bad service?" Elijah chuckled. "Exactly. Space has terrible Wi-Fi." He didn't talk down to Malik, didn't sugarcoat things. He broke down complicated systems and made his son feel like he belonged in the conversation. That was the gift. Later that night, Malik sat on his bed with a manila folder from his dad's home office. Inside were photos from the Jet Propulsion Lab, sketches of spacecraft antenna systems, and his favorite one where he and Elijah stood side by side, both wearing NASA badges and grinning like they'd just won the Super Bowl. "Can I take this to school?" Malik asked. Elijah shook his head gently. "Can't bring classified stuff to 3rd grade, buddy. Not even one little page." Malik sighed, deflating just a bit. "You don't need the folder," Elijah said, sitting beside him. "All you need is your voice. Just tell them what I do, and tell them you're proud." Malik hesitated. "What if they don't believe me?" Elijah paused, the smile fading from his lips, replaced by something heavier. "Then that's their problem, not yours. What matters is that you believe you. And if they laugh," he leaned in, his hand resting on Malik's shoulder, "you keep your head up because truth doesn't need applause. It just needs to be spoken." Malik nodded slowly. He didn't fully understand, not yet, but he trusted his dad. So that night, he made a plan. He drew a picture of Elijah holding Earth in one hand and a satellite in the other. He practiced his lines in front of the mirror, mimicking his dad's confident tone, even adding the bad space Wi-Fi joke to get a laugh. He was ready, or so he thought. Back at school, after Mr. Reynolds' laugh, that plan unraveled fast. Malik didn't share his drawing. He didn't practice anymore. He didn't speak. At lunch, he crumpled the picture and shoved it to the bottom of his backpack. Excitement had turned to embarrassment in the blink of an eye. One comment from the wrong person, especially an adult, had collapsed the confidence Malik had built over weeks. He felt small, silenced. And Elijah Carter had no idea. He was still prepping his slides for the big day cartoon rockets, close-ups of Mars terrain, a photo of the comms relay his team had helped build. But he wouldn't need the slideshow, because when he walked into that classroom the next day, his badge would do the talking, and his presence would rewrite everything. Back in room 12 of Lincoln Elementary, Malik Carter sat in his chair, knees bouncing, palms sweaty. The last hour of the school day was reserved for Career Week presentations, and the classroom buzzed with the giddy chaos of cupcakes, tire gauges, and proud parents holding up props. But Malik didn't laugh, didn't clap, didn't even look up when Thomas's uncle passed around a grease-streaked wrench like it was a sacred relic. All Malik could do was keep his eyes locked on the door. He imagined the moment like a movie, his dad walking in, calm and collected, the NASA badge gleaming under the classroom lights. He imagined Mr. Reynolds' expression crumbling. But as each minute passed, doubt crept in like fog. What if something came up? What if he doesn't show? What if Mr. Reynolds was right? That's the poison of doubt. It doesn't shout. It whispers. Quiet, cruel things that make you question the people you love, even yourself. Mr. Reynolds, clipboard in hand, occasionally glanced at Malik. His jaw worked as if he wanted to say something, but the words never made it out. Maybe guilt had started to settle in, maybe not. Either way, he didn't apologize, not yet. He just kept calling in the next parent, kept the show moving. "All right," he said, glancing down his list. "Next up, we have..." He stopped mid-sentence. The door had already opened, and in stepped Dr. Elijah Carter. He wore a navy blue blazer, slacks, and a crisp white shirt. Clipped just below the breast pocket was that unmistakable NASA badge, catching the light like a quiet declaration of truth. His walk was steady, his expression composed, but his eyes scanned the room like he already knew what had happened. Malik's chair screeched against the floor as he shot upright, eyes wide, jaw slack. "Hello," Elijah said, voice rich and clear, cutting through the buzz like a quiet thunderclap. "I'm Dr. Carter. I design spacecraft." The classroom froze, not with confusion, with realization. A few students blinked. Others looked from Elijah to Malik and back again. Mila, sitting nearby, whispered, "I told you." But it was Mr. Reynolds who seemed most shaken. His clipboard dipped slightly in his hand. His mouth opened, then shut. His eyes darted to Malik, who now sat taller than he had all day. Elijah didn't gloat, didn't grandstand. He simply stepped to the front of the class, nodded once at Mr. Reynolds, and clicked his small presentation remote. The screen behind him lit up with an image of Mars, a red swirl of dust and possibility. "So," he said casually, "you all learning about jobs this week?" A hand shot up. "Do you fly rockets?" Elijah smiled. "Not quite. I help build the systems that let rockets talk to us once they're up there. Think of it like this. Spacecraft need phones, and my team builds the phones." Another student laughed. "Like space iPhones?" "Exactly," Elijah chuckled, but with really bad reception. The kids leaned in. Even Malik smiled. Elijah clicked again, this time showing an image of the Mars relay his team developed. Satellites in orbit, a control room full of blinking monitors, and finally, a photo of him and Malik, side by side at the Jet Propulsion Lab, wearing matching badges. But the most powerful moment came at the end. Elijah paused. His tone shifted. "By the way," he said, eyes scanning the room, "I heard someone say earlier that working at NASA might be unrealistic." He let the word linger in the air like smoke. Then he turned to Malik. "Well," he said with a small, knowing smile, "I guess some folks have a different definition of realistic." The room didn't erupt. It didn't need to, because the silence said everything. Mr. Reynolds swallowed hard, his face pale. His clipboard now hung limp at his side. No more jokes, no more smirks. Just the cold, quiet weight of being wrong in front of 30 wide-eyed children. When Elijah wrapped up his talk and thanked the class, he added only one final note softly, as he passed Mr. Reynolds on the way out. "I hope your students always feel heard, especially the ones brave enough to dream big." Then he was gone. But the atmosphere he left behind, that stayed, and it changed everything. For a full minute after Dr. Elijah Carter walked out, the room remained suspended in an odd, unfamiliar hush. Chairs creaked, backpacks rustled, but no one quite knew what to say, even Mr. Pronant. Reynolds, usually the conductor of the classroom's energy, stood frozen at the front, clipboard limp in his hand, mouth slightly open like he'd forgotten what came next. The balance of power had shifted. The kids weren't looking at him anymore. They were looking at Malik Carter. And Malik wasn't gloating, wasn't smirking. He just sat at his desk with his head high, eyes steady, like someone who'd finally been allowed to take up space without apology. Mr. Reynolds cleared his throat, the sound brittle in the silence. Let's thank Dr. Carter for his presentation. Mila started the clapping. A few kids followed, but the applause was awkward, shallow, forced. No one was clapping for Mr. Reynolds. He tried to continue with the next parent on the list, but the air had changed. The cupcake mom, the tire gauge uncle didn't matter anymore, because 5 minutes ago, the unimaginable had walked into that room and shattered every quiet stereotype that had been floating around all year. After the final presentation, as the bell rang and the kids scrambled for their backpacks, Malik didn't move. He sat still, hands folded neatly, like he was waiting for something. Mr. Reynolds lingered by his desk, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, suddenly unsure what to do with his voice. He looked at Malik, then glanced toward the door, then back again. "Hey," he said too casually, trying to sound warm. "Your dad. He seems like a pretty smart guy." Malik looked up, face unreadable. "He is." Mr. Reynolds offered a tight nod. I wanted to say I may have jumped the gun earlier." Silence. Malik didn't blink, didn't rescue him, so Mr. Reynolds kept talking, his voice lower now. "What I meant to say was, sometimes adults get it wrong. We say things without thinking, and when we do, we hurt people, especially kids. I didn't mean to, but you laughed." That stopped him cold. The teacher winced. "Yeah," he said after a long pause. "I did, and I'm sorry. That wasn't right. I should have listened." Still no nod, no softening from Malik. Because this wasn't just about an apology. It was about something deeper. Trust broken in public doesn't heal with words whispered in private. "I hope," Mr. Reynolds said finally, "you'll give me a chance to do better." Malik stood slowly, slung his backpack over one shoulder, and turned to leave. But just before stepping through the door, he glanced back. "It wasn't my imagination," he said quietly. "That's really my dad." And with that, he walked out, leaving Mr. Reynolds standing by the desk where a child had once been dismissed with a chuckle now, haunted by the echo of his own disbelief. For the first time in a long time, the teacher didn't feel like the smartest man in the room. He felt like the one who had missed the most important lesson of all. That evening, the Arizona sky glowed orange and lavender as the sun dipped behind the rooftops. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional clink of a spoon against a cereal bowl. Malik Carter sat at the kitchen table, slowly stirring his dinner, a bowl of Fruit Loops, picked more for comfort than nutrition. Across from him, Dr. Elijah Carter leaned against the counter, sipping coffee from a chipped black mug that read, "NASA, not always sitting around." They hadn't spoken much since leaving school. There hadn't been a need. The silence between them wasn't heavy or awkward. It was shared space, a kind of knowing that didn't need translation. But Malik's eyes were restless. Finally he looked up. "Did you hear him?" Elijah didn't ask who. He knew. He nodded. "Yeah, I heard. When I said you worked at NASA." He laughed. Elijah set the mug down gently, walked over, and sat across from his son. "Why do people do that?" Malik asked, the question small but packed with all the weight of the day. Elijah's voice was low, steady. "Because some people only believe in what they've already seen. And when something doesn't fit their picture of the world," he paused, "they try to laugh it away. Not always out of hate, sometimes just out of fear or ignorance." Malik's spoon stilled in his bowl. "I didn't feel smart anymore," he said, eyes down. Elijah leaned in, elbows on the table. His voice got firmer, but never louder. "Don't let someone else's doubt erase your truth." He let that sit. "You know who I am. You know who you are. That's enough." Malik didn't smile, but he nodded just once. "And for what it's worth," Elijah added, "you did good today. You told the truth. You held your ground. That takes guts." There was a long pause. Then, Malik looked up, eyes a little brighter than before. "Do you think he really meant it? The apology?" Elijah shrugged gently. "I think maybe he realized something today. And whether he meant it or not, that's not your weight to carry." Malik nodded again, firmer this time. In the quiet that followed, Elijah stood and ruffled his son's curls before heading back to his desk, where half-written equations waited to be solved. And Malik? He finished his cereal, rinsed his bowl, and tucked the moment into his memory. Because that kitchen wasn't just where dinner happened that night. It's where the truth lived quiet, but undeniable, and no one would ever laugh it away again. The next morning at Lincoln Elementary, something had shifted. It wasn't loud or obvious, just a feeling in the air. Kids who'd giggled the day before now greeted Malik with a nod. Some even scooted closer to sit near him during reading time. One boy asked if his dad had ever met an astronaut. Another whispered, "Can he bring a space tool to class?" Malik didn't brag. He didn't need to. He just smiled and answered softly, moving through the day like a boy who knew the ground beneath him was steady again. At recess, Ava ran up beside him, sneakers kicking up dust. "They believe you now," she said, grinning. Malik shrugged. They didn't have to, and that was the difference. That was the power. Back inside, in the quiet of the staff lounge, Mr. Reynolds sat alone for a while, his sandwich untouched, his thoughts heavy. Before the bell rang, he slipped out and dropped a folded note into Malik's cubby. It wasn't typed, wasn't official, just a few handwritten words on lined paper. "Malik, you were right. You shouldn't have had to prove anything to us. Keep dreaming big, Mr. Reynolds." Malik found it after lunch. He didn't smile, didn't read it twice. He folded it up, slid it into his backpack, and zipped it shut, because he hadn't needed the apology. But maybe someone else had needed to say it. That afternoon, as the final bell rang, Malik walked out of school with his chin high, not because the class believed him now, but because the people who mattered most never stopped. His truth had stood tall, even when others tried to shrink it. And somewhere inside that classroom, a teacher had been reminded of a lesson he should have never forgotten. That children carry dreams too big to fit inside someone else's small expectations. That when we laugh at their belief, we don't just crush ambition, we silence a voice. But not Malik Carter's. His voice stayed loud, clear, true, because the truth doesn't need permission. It just needs someone brave enough to say it, especially when no one else will. In life, there will be moments when you speak a truth straight from your heart only, to be mocked, doubted, or worse, dismissed. Sometimes it's a teacher, sometimes a stranger, sometimes someone who once claimed to love you. But remember this, truth doesn't need approval. It only needs your courage to be spoken. If you've ever been judged by the color of your skin, by the clothes you wear, by where you come from, or by the dreams you dare to carry, if you've ever been that child, head bowed, because someone said your dream was too far out of reach, if you've ever stayed silent, just to avoid being hurt, then know this, your voice matters, your truth belongs, and the world needs more of it.